The 1996 Constitution has been described by some political critics as a good idea turned upside down. To them, the implementation of the 1996 Constitution that was adopted on 18th of January 1996 is failing, just as the United Nations is failing. They have described the action as a lame man struggling to reach the Mount Cameroon Race of Hope Summit just to earn 10 million francs CFA. According to some pundits, the Constitution was drafted to solve pressing issues of the nation, to meet up with the socio-political, cultural, economical differences of all of the people of Cameroon. Above all, also to give equal opportunities for Cameroonians. It was a laudable effort by many as they saw the Constitution to address the pressing issues facing the people of the northwest and southwest region of the country. But 26 years on, some say the implementation of the Constitution is at a snail pace. Critics have it that it took the blood of the peace-loving people of northwest and southwest region to force key stakeholders of the country to even think of implementing some aspect of the Constitution that was agreed at 26 years ago. To begin with, they talked about the implementation or the creation of the Regional House of Assembly, the special status, also the effective decentralization, which happens to be the center of the Constitution of 1996, that it took the peace-loving people of the northwest and southwest region blood before the decentralization can be baptized to accelerated decentralization. However, they still have it that the implementation of what has been adopted so far is still very slow, that the creation of the special status for the northwest and southwest region is something that should have been done before. There is no perfect system, but a government has one priority: to meet the objective of its people, to provide and protect those who are vulnerable, and to ensure that the poor are given the equal status and everyone is not above or below the law. A situation which is daunting as far as we witness the 1996 Constitution. On the other side of the aisle, others are saying that the Constitution is well implemented, that the government so far has been able to implement some aspect of the Constitution, that institution is a process, that when you're governing, there is a process in where things are supposed to go. However, economic entrepreneurial politicians and also entrepreneurial elites are capitalizing on the phrase that there is no perfect system. Regardless of whether there is no perfect system or not, the man in northwest and southwest region is in dire need of peace, and the people of Elobo and those in littoral region also need equal opportunities to be given, so as we will move to the land of promise, land of glory, full of promises, and we must be able to attain it. Whereas we are looking at the situation where many are crying for peace in the northwest and southwest region, others are celebrating what they think is winning the war. But there is a difference between winning the war and winning the peace. However, who is against the smooth implementation of the 1996 Constitution? Of what interests do they have? And what are the strengths and weaknesses of the 1996 Constitution? This is House of Commons with me, Tah Mai Javis. Senior journalist and a political commentator, Kikishi Lawrence, welcome and happy Sunday.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
It's been a while. We've not, have you for the program, and hope the CAN is moving on well from your perspective.
CAN, that is the African Cup of Nations, that is the competition that is going on in our country. It's moving on the way it's supposed to move, because it depends very much on the way it was prepared in the beginning. So the hitches you have, or whatever, like the pitch that we were talking about, that is not faring well at Japoma, and other security challenges, it only tells the way the competition was prepared. So it's moving on accepted. It is accepted anyway.
Thank you very much. Also in the studio we have Ndiwum Emmanuel, who is a member of a civil society and has been pressing hard on equal opportunities for all young people, and also to ensure that dialogue takes a center stage to resolve the Anglophone crisis. You're welcome, Ndiwum Emmanuel.
Thank you very much, Tah Mai Javis. It's always a pleasure to be on your platform. Let me seize this opportunity to greet all the people of Norwest, especially those from the Com land, and a special one to the Fund of Com, who have remained very neutral in the face of whatsoever have been going on in Norwest and Southwest, and we say kudos to you, Mbe.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to say thanks to all those who are watching us on different parts of the Northwest, Southwest, those who are watching on Facebook, those who are watching on YouTube, those who are watching on their TV set, those who also may have a different view with us, are the members of the panel. I want to say happy Sunday to you too. We were also expecting Senior Barrister Ndiwum Emmanuel and also Barrister Tamfu, who were supposed to be here. Unfortunately, they cannot be here today. They notified me just few hours to the program that they have difficulties getting to the studio, and subsequent they will be with us on the subsequent edition of our program. So to start today's edition of the program, let us take a look as to a report done by Joyce Ngong looking at the 1996 Constitution and the view of Professor Elvis Ngole, who is also the coordinator of the CPDM Academy, former Minister of Forestry and Wildlife. Professor Elvis Ngole gave a look and articulation into the 1996 Constitution.
The Republic of Cameroon adopted a new baby, the promulgation of Law Number 96/06 of January 18, 1996, revising the Constitution of June 2, 1972, a constitution which seemed to demonstrate the will of the Paul Biya regime to continue the process of liberalization of Cameroonian political life initiated in the early 90s.
The 1996 Constitution made Cameroon a decentralized unitary system, unlike the third or the 72 Constitution. Two, the 1996 Constitution ushered in basic freedoms and liberties of Cameroon: political freedoms, economic freedoms, social freedoms, and cultural freedoms. Three, the 1996 Constitution created democratic institutions aimed at making democracy strong, reinforcing democracy. And among those institutions that were created were the Constitutional Council, the Senate, and because the 1996 Constitution ushered in a decentralized unitary system, decentralization was given meaning by carrying out elections into regional assemblies or regional councils.
The January 18, 1996 Constitution has brought about many changes to the landscape and political life in Cameroon. The creation of a Senate, a Constitutional Council, regional councils, and over half a dozen of institutions which 26 years later are gradually being put in place.
The 1996 Constitution had, in what looked like a hidden clause, the creation of a special status for some regions. And in the last national dialogue, it occurred to everybody that the northwest and southwest regions were suited to be made special regions. And based on the recommendations of the major national dialogue which took place 2 years ago, and the Article 62 of the 1996 Constitution, the northwest and southwest regions have special status, by which it means that in their organization as regions, in their functioning as regions, they have certain specificities which are different from the organization and functioning of the other 8 regions.
The 1996 Constitution of Cameroon was adopted at a time of great expectations when the country was transitioning from an authoritarian state to a constitutional democracy. Yet, despite the numerous notable institutional changes and advancements so far, the 1996 Constitution has been the subject of numerous criticisms. More than 2 decades on, some political activists and members of the opposition hold that the Constitution has failed in several aspects, especially in the regulation of political life or responding to pressing societal demands.
If you look at Article 5 of the Constitution, I have a copy here. It said the head of state shall be the symbol of national unity. We have an absentee president that people don't know at times if he's alive or not. A president who is so divisive that he will allow his own political party, they have one rule for themselves, and the opposition political party cannot exercise the same rights. The Constitution of Cameroon is not a plausible constitution.
Political activists accuse the Constitution in particular of some sort of power monopoly. They believe that it granted the head of state an absolute control of power to the detriment of democracy.
Oppositions, they don't have a right. If you look inside the Constitution of Cameroon, it is clear. They say opposition party must bound by democratic principle, national unity and sovereignty. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't state the facts. The Constitution is just a paper to authorize some minority people to oppress the majority.
Despite the shortcomings of the Constitution, Cameroonians are hopeful. With time, its provisions will be fully accomplished. It is often said there is no perfect system of governance.
Thank you very much, Joy Ngong, for that. Before we kickstart and look at a review of the 1996 Constitution, the strengths and weaknesses, let us look at what is making news in Cameroon. Plus 46 casualties have been reported so far following an incident that occurred in Yaoundé at Bastos, where a snack bar caught fire. There was a kind of an explosion, as we were told, which we have not independently verified the cause of the incident at Bastos, and several people were injured as far as that incident is concerned. Mr. Kikishi Lawrence, you are a senior journalist. You've been following the event in Yaoundé. It's a sad day for the people of Yaoundé.
Yeah, the latest information says that it was not a criminal act, okay? The people apparently had, I don't know whether it's a tradition in the nightclub, where there's this aspect of fireworks and, celebration and the rest. So it sparked and went right up to the ceiling, and it's as if there's a pipe that carries gas, some gas there that exploded up there and then caused the fire to go around all around the nightclub. So so far it's still very difficult to give figures because there were more than 100 people in that room. And when you know the ambience that can be in that kind of environment, you know that there was going to be confusion and then people running all ends. Stampede. And then since it's fire, oh my God, there are some corpses that are not very good to look at. So they have been spread in 3 hospitals so far in Yaoundé, and the police were there, government officials were there, and any moment from now we should be getting a statement from the Minister of Communication, who was there, with 2 or 3 other government officials who were there. I must say that it's a sad event.
Yes, it's a sad day
for... went for feasting, for celebration, and ended up losing their lives, others losing their limbs, others deformed completely because of fire. So we really pray that the number of deaths should reduce, shouldn't extend to some big number that would be frightful. Well, we're waiting for the last report that will be coming up.
Event like this, what is expected of the society? What role does the society now have on events like this? And also maybe it's a wake-up call as far as regulations of nightclubs are concerned, in terms of safety measures, because sometimes it's difficult to have the safety measures and exit. For
your information, we did some control. I was working with the electricity distribution company, our national electricity distribution company. They sent out a team to verify some customers. They would get to your home, check where's your meter, you indicate where it is, and then they look at the meter, look at the connections in your house. And we landed on a nightclub. I'm talking of a nightclub that had not been paying electricity bills for more than 11 years. In other words, the connections there were directly from the source of electricity supply company. And a gentleman, in fact there are 2 of them, were comfortably earning a good salary on that nightclub every month for that work, for that dirty work. The luck is that where there was no fire that caught that one, it would have been terrible, because the technicians at the company were telling me that the quantity of electricity up there should not come directly to your house or to your facility. Yes, that the risks of fire are too high, far too high, and the risk of not being able to even control the fire are higher. In other words, by the time you are managing to control the fire, it is spreading. So that they have techniques of reducing the tension before it gets to a house, depending on the consumption. They must be sure that you have enough equipment that will take the quantity of energy, the electricity that they give you, before they can release that quantity. Otherwise, it's very risky. And then they gave us an idea of how we get the 2 meters, they call it two-phase, 4-phase, and the rest. You know, there is an estimated consumption, because it's not that generally everybody has a TV set, a refrigerator, and maybe a radio set in the house, and ironing,
an AC system.
So they take those things, put them together, estimate, okay, this man a family can consume this. Yes, that's how they give you. So unfortunately, these are things that should be controlled. When you have a place like a nightclub, without such control, not to talk of what you just mentioned, security. What happens if even the sitting space, anybody now, like what I see in Douala, anybody wants to run a small wine shop along the streets, all right? No matter how small the place is, they create some sitting space and the rest. And then when you make a nightclub for that matter, and then the sitting space, because there are conditions for occupying such space for such activities. Even movement, you are not supposed to move. The tendency is you can push down people's drinks and things like that. All those things can happen. So regulations are there for all those things to be done, but they are not implemented.
I said the Ndiwum Emmanuel for the people in Yaoundé and Cameroonians as a whole, because those are Cameroonians, and maybe people who probably would have helped resolve some of the pressing issues we are facing in the country. Some are having difficulties.
Well, it's a sad day indeed. It's a sad day, and there are some incidents that happen that there is no magic that a human being could have stopped them from happening.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of such incidents, because even tonight I'm planning to go to a nightclub, and I'm not sure that someone will stop me from going to the nightclub because an incident happened. It's only unfortunate, and we must accept that it's unfortunate. But then, like the senior journalist said, that they are supposed to be in developed countries, and even in some less developed countries. You have traveled out of Cameroon, you have seen how nightclubs.
Yes, there are safety areas, exit doors, and the rest.
In case of this, you enter here.
And there are some underground boreholes that they just open, everybody goes down.
That's why I wanted to push it back to you, because from your own experience that you have seen somewhere, you will know that all this comes back to tell us that Cameroon as a whole needs to be remade in many different sectors. We need regulations in everything. We are only talking about nightclubs. What about the million churches that are growing in Cameroon every day? And we discover that even people's houses, only parlors are rented now in Douala for churches. And such a thing can still occur in such an area.
Yeah, because he was talking about the electricity voltage that people use.
The voltage regulation in Cameroon is not regulated, because those who manage that sector are mostly thieves. They are mostly people who have something to gain from it through the back door. Let me tell you that only here in Douala, there are enterprises that do not pay electricity, but they have electricity bills that finally do not get to Sonel or to NU. And those are criminal acts. We have been denouncing and denouncing, but they will ask you, where are the proofs? You are living with neighbors, you know very well that this neighbor is not having a meter, but he's using light, he's consuming light, and he does not pay anything at the end of the month. Those are deviant behaviors that should be shunned with all energy in us. And of course, it should be collective. This one, we should not just say that the government, we know that the government normally has been failing as usual. But then, your life as an individual does not depend on the government. First, security should be you yourself, because At least if we were in a country where we were used to self-regulatory measures first, before you go into a nightclub, you yourself, if you have taken off time to study the kind of safety measures that could be put in such a place, you can do a physical study, even for 5 minutes. You see that they are not all in place and you disappear. You go to where you deem it safe, and then your safety is guaranteed. So it's unfortunate, and I want to say my condolence to all those who were touched in one or the other, because to go out to enjoy and you end up not coming back and middle roasted as a chicken is frustrating.
Yeah, in terms of safety, I think you're right, because sometimes before I get into a place, especially I snap by, I always ask myself, where are the exit points in case of any emergency? Where am I going to? And should I sit at the exit point? I always ensure I sit at the exit point, because
and most of them have just one door.
And you have just one door, and sometimes
a very big snack.
Big snack, and you have just one door, Mr. Kikishi. It's time now for us.
With private rooms inside.
No. Yeah, now I think this now depends on the governors per regions and the senior divisional officers per regions to ensure that we have the safety of clients should be priority.
No, Ellis said something very important about self-discipline, being conscious. That too comes with public awareness. Somebody or some institution should be raising awareness that, okay, make sure that you are sure of an environment before you get into it. But as far as all public environments are concerned, once you see a public institution, you know that some institution had given it approval, that okay, I've verified and I think that this thing can run. The public will not be at risk of this. So somebody has to pay for that. If it wasn't done up front, because somebody who is enjoying himself, who leaves the house, maybe he got some big award or something and is happy, has very little time to start asking questions about a nightclub. Once he gets in at that hour, this thing happened at about 3 a.m., 3 a.m. thereabout. Maybe he got there at midnight, okay, and he's coming from home where he had been celebrating with friends. The time to think about
safety,
looking about the environment and safety is not there. So the public, that is public offices, which are now the government, which we cannot avoid, or councils, or depending on whoever is in charge of giving license.
Okay.
Because before you give a license, you are taking responsibility. If you ever ask who gave you the license, and you mention the person who gave you the license, I have nothing to ask you again about the conditions. I just go back to the person.
The license?
Yes.
The person who licensed
you. Takes responsibility to say, okay, what made me to give him license was condition number 1 fulfilled, condition number 2 fulfilled, condition number 3 fulfilled. So somebody has to answer. You don't expect the beneficiary to answer,
okay,
or to be responsible, because the beneficiary saw a public place that is existing and that surely is licensed. If it is not licensed, there are control systems that have to stop there and put it out of the way.
And the question will now come in, how long it operated and how long did the official know that it was not licensed? So somebody has to still take responsibility.
Oh yes, a lot of things are going to happen there.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, I want us to briefly look at Francis Ngannou, who defended the title yesterday, before diving straight into the topic of today, because he defended the title yesterday, a title competition so far. This was jubilation at his hometown. Thank you. There, briefly, I begin with you. It was a difficult match for Francis Ngannou. At the end of the day, he defended the title like the indomitables.
Yes. The sweetest victory is the one that you grab through the most difficult way. I think he should be appreciated and applauded for that. Congratulations once more, Ngano. If I think Cameroon is proud, even if at one point Cameroon did not, as a body, did not know that he was existing, and today they can claim relationship on his victory. I think it's a good thing to claim the relationship now. So congratulations to Ngano, and of course, given the fact that it was a complicated one, I think it's going to be one but very sweet victory.
Mr. Lawrence, it was a difficult match for Ngano. One word, what's the word you have for him?
That's a French citizen, so what do you want me to say about someone who is a French citizen? He was born in Batia and then he became a French citizen. So he went to France without documents. He didn't have documents, okay? Along the line, he had his documents, and through his art, he became famous.
I'm mindful of the fact that we don't take dual nationality on.
So what are we then celebrating?
Anyway, they celebrated as by officials as Cameroonians.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's funny. Now, the challenge is that we should have a forum like the ones that were used to celebrate. We should have them to build younger talents, so that whether they grow and make it or not. So that when they make it, we have a reason to celebrate. When they don't make it, we know that we did our best. Rather than waiting, doing other things, and then when it shines out there, we say, oh no, it's us.
It's one of us.
Yes.
And when he navigated his way to the
Mediterranean, nobody
he met face to face with death.
Oh my God. I said, that man did not have a single paper. And then from sans papier now, he is a French citizen. Now, since he was born in Cameroon, the French people are calling him Franco-Cameroonais. Okay? Now, Cameroonians are saying that he is a Cameroonian.
Without that, we don't accept dual nationality.
We don't. The law is completely against that.
Let's go back to the report of Joy Gong. Then we'll navigate now to the topic of the day, which is 26 years after the adoption of the 1996 Constitution. What are the strengths and weaknesses?
The Republic of Cameroon adopted a new baby, the promulgation of Law Number 96/06 of January 18, 1996, revising the Constitution of June 2, 1972, a constitution which seemed to demonstrate the will of the Paul Biya regime to continue the process of liberalization of Cameroonian political life initiated in the early 90s.
The 1996 Constitution made Cameroon a decentralized unitary system, unlike the third or the 72 Constitution. Two, the 1996 Constitution ushered in basic freedoms and liberties of Cameroon: political freedoms, economic freedoms, social freedoms, and cultural freedoms. Three, the 1996 Constitution created democratic institutions aimed at making democracy strong, reinforcing democracy. And among those institutions that were created were the Constitutional Council, the Senate, and because the 1996 Constitution ushered in a decentralized unitary system, decentralization was given meaning by carrying out elections into regional assemblies or regional councils.
The January 18, 1996 Constitution has brought about many changes to the landscape and political life in Cameroon. The creation of a Senate, a Constitutional Council, regional councils, and over half a dozen of institutions which 26 years later are gradually being put in place.
The 1996 Constitution had, in what looked like a hidden clause, the creation of a special status for some regions. And in the last national dialogue, it occurred to everybody that the northern and south regions were suited to be made special regions. And based on the recommendations of the major national dialogue which took place 2 years ago, and the Article 62 of the 1996 Constitution, the northern and southwest regions have special status, by which it means that in their organization as regions, in their functioning as regions, they have certain specificities which are different from the organization and functioning of the other 8 regions.
The 1996 Constitution of Cameroon was adopted at a time of great expectations when the country was transitioning from an authoritarian state to a constitutional democracy. Yet, despite the numerous notable institutional changes and advancements so far, the 1996 Constitution has been the subject of numerous criticisms. More than 2 decades on, some political activists and members of the opposition hold that the Constitution has failed in several aspects, especially in the regulation of political life or responding to pressing societal demands.
If you look at Article 5 of the Constitution, I have a copy here. It said the head of state shall be the symbol of national unity. We have an absentee president that people don't know at times if he's alive or not. A president who is so divisive that he will allow his own political party, they have one rule for themselves, and the opposition political party cannot exercise the same rights. The Constitution of Cameroon is not a plausible constitution.
Political activists accuse the Constitution in particular of some sort of power monopoly. They believe that it granted the head of state an absolute control of power to the detriment of democracy.
Oppositions, they don't have a right. If you look inside the Constitution of Cameroon, it is clear. They say opposition party must bound by democratic principle, national unity and sovereignty. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't state the facts. The Constitution is just a paper to authorize some minority people to oppress the majority.
Despite the shortcomings of the Constitution, Cameroonians are hopeful. With time, its provisions will be fully accomplished. It is often said there is no perfect system of governance.
Thank you very much. I'll begin with you, Mr. Kikishi. You are a senior journalist and you understand this 1996 Constitution. A lot of people were, these new generations were not born, but you saw the transition from the 1996 Constitution, which is a promulgation of the 1972 Constitution, the revised Constitution on June 2nd, 1972. So far, what is your appraisal of where we are now, if you look at what it was in 26 years after?
Well, the background is that it changed the state of Cameroon, that is the form of state, from a unitary state to what was called then in 1996 decentralized unitary state. That's even the big question. What do you mean by decentralized unitary state? Either it's a unitary state or it is not. And if it is not a unitary state, something else should apply. Maybe a federated state if you want, okay? Maybe a confederated state if you want. But they preferred what they call decentralized unitary state, which to me it's questionable. So after that, it came after the 1990s, where there was a lot of pressure, political pressure, from the wind of what was called the wind of change at the time that was blowing across Africa. In Cameroon particularly, the pressure from the opposition parties was so high that they only have to, these 2 parameters only had to make the government to bow into bringing in reforms. So that is the result of what we call the tripartite discussion that was held at the time, whereby it was discovered by many Cameroonians who did not know that there was what we are calling today the Anglophone problem. When I say many, it's because some people came from the far north, others from the east, and the rest who were not around this area to understand that, okay, there's a certain relationship between Anglophones and Francophones in the 60s and whatever. So they discovered it there and then saw the pressure that was coming in from the big team that came from that end. Because when the Anglophones were informed about the tripartite meeting to discuss the state of the country, they prepared a team and sent here. They sent a team to Yaoundé to present their case, the case for a federation, which they did. So these are the parameters, the things or the background to the 1996 Constitution. So it wasn't as if a country at one point sits and says, something is wrong with our Constitution, let's fix it. It was a product of pressure that was around. And coming from that end, the powers that be at the time could only listen. Now, did they bow? With the 1996 Constitution, you would say yes. But if you go inside, the answer will be negative. No, not even just implementation, the drafting itself. I'm still at the level of the drafting. When you say Article 66, state officials will have to declare their assets before and after quitting office. You write it there. When you say we're going to create regions, since you have said it's a decentralized unitary state, so for it to be decentralized, you have to create regions. Henceforth, we'll have regions. Okay? Everybody's looking at it and it's progressing. It's going on. There are many of those articles in it that are just floating like that. All right? For some regions that we will create, we will give them special status. We asked some experts at the time, and they told us that yes, a region like the East has a specific problem in that the school rate, just like in the North and Far North, is not as high as in other regions. So those are some of the things that can make the state to consider them as special status regions. Okay? Well, I took it with a pinch of salt because I don't know which region is not special. Every region is special. So from there now, what even struck me most was the article that says that this constitution will be implemented progressively.
Yes.
That was where I was lost. How do you have a constitution and you cannot implement? Meaning that as you have finished and given me in 1996, I'll brandish it and I put it, and I'm waiting. And that's why we're talking about 26 years before we can say, okay, the Constitutional Council has up to 6 months to set up, because now we have signed a decree. After 26 years, we have signed a decree, so you have 6 months now to do, and not even to do anything, but to organize yourself, appoint somebody, get space for an office. So when will they start work, and what will they be doing concretely is what we do not yet know. So on the whole, it's my point of view, I know that after the 1972 Constitution, we do not yet have a constitution. We do not yet have a constitution. What we have is a document that was adopted in 1996,
which will be implemented
progressively, and then at one point maybe they will end and say, okay, now this is our constitution.
Because it is stated that it will be implemented progressively.
Yes. So it is not yet full, it's not yet complete. Okay, so it will be implemented progressively. We have a house of chiefs. Now, when you give the Northwest and Southwest now as special status and you refer it to that constitution, by the time of that constitution, if that were the case, it would have been clearly stated that it will be for the Northwest and Southwest regions. And for these reasons, it should be constitutional. Okay? Because when you give them now, it's the same thing like you can give to the East tomorrow, it's the same thing.
Yeah, based on what you said,
yes.
The East too can claim.
Yes, and they will be right, because what is written in the Constitution is for specificities.
And they too have their own specificities.
Of course, as every region has. So it is not for the Anglophone problem that you are giving a special status. You are giving a wrong solution to the right problem. Okay, it's a wrong solution to the right problems. And it contradicts with what we can call a constitution, which to me is not yet a constitution. It will be a constitution when it is signed and a date put on it. But when it is signed and said, this constitution will be implemented progressively, then there's a problem.
It means that at the end of the day, whoever is administering the country has the right
to do anything, to say, well, we are still implementing. Yes, so I can modify this and go ahead. So proof is that the term of office for presidency at one point had to change.
Yes.
Okay, from 5 years
to 7 years.
To 7 years. And it had to change again from 7 years, 2 terms, two terms, to renewable.
For life.
So it is still being implemented. So it's not yet a constitution. When it's a constitution, it is kept. Everybody has a copy. But now when you modify, everybody has no copy anymore. Because the copy we had in 1996 is no longer the same. Meaning that you have to, each time you work on it, you go around and distribute the modifications. So.
Okay. Ndiwum Emmanuel, you've listened to Mr. Kikishi about the 1996 Constitution. The Constitution, when it was adopted, though they said progressively, gave room for the creation of the Senate, creation of the Constitutional Council, the Regional Assembly, and also effective the decentralization system. 26 years on, many argued that it took the blood of the peace-loving people of Northwest and Southwest region for key stakeholders to even look at the Constitution and say, hey, there's something like this that can resolve this problem.
Tah Mai Javis, we cannot talk about the 1996 Constitution, or better still, there is no Constitution that shall be talked about in this country without failing to mention the fact that the dubious nature of Ahijo in Fuman in 1961 caused the constant changing of what we are calling constitutions today. You would understand that had it been what was accepted or agreed upon in Fuman between the West Cameroon leaders and the East Cameroon leaders, who were respectively under the guise of Foncha from the West Cameroon and Ahijo from East Cameroon, in which French and English were supposed to be of equal strength, of which the two equal entities that came together were supposed to enjoy equal strength in every domain. Had it been it was respected, we would not have been talking about another constitution in 1972, which was later revised in 1996. That said, you need to also understand that in 1972, when Ahijo took again upon himself to fool the West Cameroonians and went ahead to dupe them to accept we and yes again, it created room for long-standing problems that were developing in the minds of Western Cameroonians. And it took them some time to read the signs and wonders that were written on the walls of the people of West Cameroon that led to the tripartite. And it is from that tripartite that the idea of a revision of a constitution was born. And then in 1966, they struggled to come up with what the senior journalist explained a while ago. This one, in brief, is to tell us that we have not been blessed with governance in this country since independence. That one should be very clear. We have not been blessed. So the bad governance we see today is not only the handwork of Mr. Biya, but it was even the handwork of his predecessors. And you would understand and bear with me that why I say we have not been blessed with good governance, because from the beginning we have had a government that has never been proactive. We have had a government that has always been reactive. Because 1996 Constitution came because of the growing anger that was developing in West Cameroon due to the violations of the terms of the Fumban Constitution. And when it came, imagine that.
Yeah, because between that time we have had the Anglophone Problem 1 and 2,
yes,
and the two gave a serious recommendation and say if by this time nothing happens, we will consider. So, which led to the tripartite? Which led to the tripartite.
And because they saw in it a fertile ground to fool us, because, and when I say generally that we have not been fortunate to have good governance, I also precise that Anglophones have not been fortunate in this country to be given a place of their own where they could feel honored as people who came back to a union with equal strength. And that is what has brought us to where we are today, Tah Mai Javis. It's an interesting topic. I don't regret the fact that our legal man is not in the office or in the studio today.
Yeah, they were to be here.
Yes, because due to some circumstances. You discover now that in the 1996 amendment, the Constitution brought an introduction to a constitutional council, which was written, but there was no time frame.
That there will be a constitutional council. There will be a Senate.
There was a Senate. There was no time frame to regulate the putting in place of the Senate. There was supposed to be provinces were to be carted away and regions brought in under decentralization, unity decentralization, of course, we are in a government that have vocabularies that are understood only by them, those who use it. Because in real linguistic parlance, if you try to study the meaning of unity, decentralization, you will not have a clear meaning. You will not have a clear definition. Anyway, believing that it is a political vocabulary which we have been forced to consume, we accepted and we waited patiently upon those who are supposed to implement the unity decentralization state. It never came. It took them a long time, 26 years down the lane, Tah Mai Javis, and it took them the Anglophone crisis before they came. And before they came out of the Anglophone crisis, something happened pushed by the opposition parties in 2011, which led to the putting in place of the Senate in 2013. Of course, we have all seen that the Senate has brought more harm than good to Cameroon. That house has been squandering the taxpayers' money for nothing. I describe it personally as a house, a nursing home for old and aged-out retirees, which is like more of a house to recompensate those who have assisted to keep the regime in place for as long as possible. Because another thing, before it escapes my mind, this 1996 constitution talked about the clear separation of powers in the country. That is, the legislative was to be independent, the executive was supposed to be independent, and the judiciary was supposed to be independent, Tah Mai. But you understand that, let me start with the Senate. The Senate, the President of the Republic, who is the chairman of the CBDM, the ruling party in power, is the person who still have the prerogative to name 30 CBDM members as part of the Senate. You have the Constitutional Council, which is strictly managed by Mr. Biya, because he's the one who names these people. And you saw how the Constitutional Council president danced like a nursery school child during a closing school ceremony, celebrating wine as if manna had fallen from heaven, because he was named, he was handpicked by Mr. Biya. You discover that all the things that were said in that 1996 constitution, they are all a failure.
Okay.
Nothing happened there. Because upon all this, there is one power in Cameroon. There are not two, there are not three, the executive. Everything begins from A to D and ends back at
no, but that is not the case when we look at Section 37. Section 37.
Look, Tah Mai, look, before you take the microphone, look, listen. We are talking about those sections. There are things that are written. They are not practical.
Okay.
Let me give you a recent example.
What is not what ought to be. That's what you're saying.
Yes. Thank you for the
that we just have more of momentum from the Constitution, but that's not.
And I will give you another recent practical example. How do you explain the fact that AFCON is taking place in Cameroon, and an order comes from the haute instruction du chef de l'État that schools should end at 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock. If we were in a system where there was separation of powers, would it be that? It will not be. That will not have been the case.
Okay.
That's just the recent proof.
Mr. Lawrence, let's look at a section. He talked about the fact that everything is on the head of state. I'm sure Justice Ayapo shared the view you just shared, that Justice Ayas says the 1996 Constitution is just simply a revised 1972, that there was no constitution adopted in 1996, that if it was a constitution, it would have been regenerated from scratch and having subsequent amendment. And now, if you look at Section 37, it says, justice shall be administered in the territory of the Republic in the name of the people of Cameroon, that the judicial power shall be exercised by the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal and Tribunal. The judicial power shall be independent of the executive and legislative powers. Magistrates of the bench shall, in the discharge of their duties, be governed only by law and their consciences. The President of the Republic shall guarantee the independence of the judicial power. He shall appoint members of the bench of the legal department. He shall assist in this task by the higher judicial council, which shall give him its opinion, on nominations, on all nominations of the bench and disciplinary action against judicial and legal officers. The organization and functioning of the higher judicial council shall be defined by law.
There are many of those things that we can go and talk about. All of that, I mean, like I told you, we don't yet have a constitution.
They say it is independent. At one point in time, the head of state appoints the judge and presides over the higher judicial council.
Exactly. He presides. That is the highest organ, the highest institution that defines the way justice should function in the country. And it's the president, the head of the executive, who presides at it. Anyway, I was going to add that somebody may also think that maybe we're being too cheap to be saying that we don't yet have a constitution. Now, while waiting, since the constitution says that those articles, the constitution will be implemented progressively. So which constitution is being applied while waiting? You understand? So is it the 1972 constitution that we are using while waiting that this one will be applied progressively? Yeah, because for example, when you have the Supreme Court that has to sit in for the Constitutional Council, it is sitting in now as per which constitution? Because this one is being applied progressively, the Constitutional Council is not yet there. So you are presenting these results as per which constitution? It defeats the purpose. Now when it is going to be applied...
Like the 2011 presidential election where the Supreme Court sat in for the Constitutional Council.
Yes, it was as per which constitution? That's the question. Because it is not as per 1996. 1996 says exactly, okay, while waiting, the Supreme Court will be working in place of the Constitutional Council. The Supreme Court is put in place by another constitution with a clear definition of its function. All right? So the second aspect is the aspect of, you already mentioned the place of appointments whereby it comes back again, because when you say it shall be independent.
Independent.
You are not independent by being defined independent. You are independent by generating your resources from somewhere.
Because like in other nations, the president appoints a judge or nominates, and the upper and lower house do the vetting and decide whether or not that nomination should go through.
And it is not a secret.
It's done
by the time he's even nominating, the press already has information about the person, and he is being profiled. Even the last child in primary school knows that this man, this is who he is. By the time you go through the process, they already know that this is the person who will be there. There's no secret idea whereby ministers even get their appointments on the radio. No, it's not. It doesn't happen that way. When it happens that way, that's where independence is put to question. So our constitution, again I put it in quote, our constitution, because at one point you don't know whether we are in the 1960, 1961, 72 or 96 constitution. Because we are applying all at the same time.
A journalist said when it comes to issues of liability, sometimes you are judged based on 1996, sometimes they take you to 1990, sometimes they take you back to 66, and that there is no clear cut as of where we should start and end.
No. And what could have guided us to have a constitution is good faith, simply good faith. Because once there is an intention to thwart any of the goals and wishes of the people, you cannot have a good constitution.
Okay, but now we've seemingly mainly we're talking about the weakness. What are now the strengths of this constitution?
The spirit of liberating power. Okay, the idea that because like saying, like Paul Biya once said, "Je vous ai compris." When there was a strike 2008, and he came out and said the young people maybe there was strike all over, and he said, "Je vous ai compris." That constitution is like saying, okay, we have understood that it is high time we introduce change in this country. But are we ready to release the change? That is the question. As for the change, yes, it's clearly indicated that, okay, we are bringing in change. We want independence for the judiciary. We want to let power at least go to the local communities, let them have power and the rest. And then, we want transparency. We want public business to go on in transparency. Article 66 will be there. So Those are ideas that float like that, which if we could hang on and actually have a clear constitution, it will help us.
Thank you very much. What are now the strengths? Because many, like Professor Ngolengole said, that the 1996 constitution at least brought in a certain level of political freedom, where, you know, before 1990, there was that system where there was no freedom of speech and expression as far as that was concerned, because we're still being looked upon from the 1966 draconian law that were instituted, where the press itself was not free, there was no freedom of association, we're under one-party political system. And in 1990 December, the President Pobia signed a decree that liberalizes and gave room for political parties to operate. And even at that level, individuals before 1990 did not have the right to open private audiovisual sector. Maybe I'll come to you on that. When we look at this, what are the strengths of this constitution? Because Professor Ngolengole said there's political freedom. And you are experiencing that because you are talking today because of that political freedom.
Well, Professor Ngolengole, whom I respect so much, who is also a big professor in political science, cannot say it all. You know, he speaks with water in his mouth because he's part of the system. You cannot completely say that, you cannot evaluate this constitution only based on the fact that people can speak now free. At that time, the population of Cameroon was not what it is today. The geography of Cameroon was not as developed as it is today. Today, even if the government were to arrest maybe many of us who are talking, the government will not succeed in arresting everybody. Yes, except they will have to arrest the entire Cameroon. So you cannot judge the positive side of that constitution based on freedom of speech. And Cameroon has also ratified a lot of, I think, has ratified a lot of these things with the international world, talking about freedom of speech. So, but to answer your question squarely, I have struggled and I have tried so much to be positive to see the strength of this constitution, and I'm not yet seeing.
So you're arguing that your political freedom today is not thanks to the constitution?
No, it should not be thanks to the constitution.
Now we are talking about the creation of the House of Chiefs. We are talking about the effective decentralization. We are talking about the creation of regional assembly. We are talking about creation of regional assembly, and elections took place. These are part of the things enshrined in the 1996 constitution.
How effective has been the effective decentralization? How active has been the House of Chiefs? We are still to get there. And remember, like the senior journalist said, it is not yet a constitution because we are waiting for the progressive implementation of this constitution. And maybe when we shall get there, we shall, in all honesty and together with you, Tah Mai Javis, try to figure out the strength of that constitution. As of now, all the brouhaha that we go through in Cameroon is showing 100% that constitution has failed. Because if the decentralization that constitution was struggling to put in place, if the Senate was active, if the Senate was not a house, a nursing house for all retirees, if all that was said in that decentralization, if powers, if the separation of powers was active, knowing that the judiciary do not encroach into the legislative, and the legislative, which was supposed to manage the government actions, in the reverse, the government is managing their action. If the executive was not present, was not omnipresent, because whether we say it or not, whether we like it or not, there is one and only one active arm of government in Cameroon that cuts across the others. That is why even to build a toilet in a school in Tukumbere, the decision comes from the presidency, which is not normal. So you cannot force me to say that there is a strength in that constitution, of which I'm not seeing. I may be wrong, but that is my view, and I'm not seeing. Maybe after the progressive implementation of that constitution, we shall get to know the strength. But as of now, I refuse to say what I don't know.
The section 57, before coming to section 57, let me do a follow-up as what I was talking to Ndiwum about. When we look at the strength from the 1996, from 1990, before 1990, there was still that draconian system of the press where we have the pre-publication censorship, where newspapers had to give soft copies of dummy of their papers to divisional officers and also government officials who became editor-in-chiefs of newsroom. Now, 1990 liberalized the press, and 1996 constitution, we have now the post-publication censorship, where now you have to go and publish and come and give copies before circulation. And that is what we are still experiencing today in the 1996 constitution, which is post-publication censorship.
Yeah, it's an aspect that is typical to, how can I say, evolving or maybe developing countries, and then some communist countries too, whereby you want to go and check the information that has to go out there. You have the tendency to check it at all costs, and then at one point it creates tension and conflict between the media and those who, the ruling class. In developed countries, that's not the case. In developed countries, the media serves as the mirror for everybody. The minister gets up in the morning, and the next paper he picks up, he will see how his project that he went and started in one locality is faring. And he will see how he's being insulted there. And he immediately calls a press conference, calls his team around and says, but look, is this what is happening? Look at what is reported here, page this and this. And for your information, those things are taken seriously instead. Out there, I've seen press cuttings that have served in courtrooms.
Yes, like especially in U.S. where you watch congressional testimonies, they bring press cuttings, they bring broadcast coverages. Yes,
and so, but if you take it lightly and say, I must be there in the beginning, you block the flow of information. I mean, while that information is supposed to come to you as news, it's supposed to be new to you. Now you want to go and create it and be part of it and even orientate it. That's why we are what we call developing countries. Well, but again, it's not the Constitution that created what we have as freedom of expression and freedom of speech. The Constitution merely accepted it.
so
yes, it came and met.
You are contradicting Professor Ngole.
No. I mean, it came and met the Constitution. There was no way. There was any country that stood in the way of freedom in those days had it hot. Heads of states ran away. There was the famous National Conference. If there was no such thing like that, Cameroon only played around and said, no, I'm afraid about National Conference, because that is what would have produced a constitution, a national conference.
Francis Nyamjo, in one of his books, defined it as a wind of change.
Yes.
That was blowing. And that brought in a period of ugly journalism in the country.
Yeah, that's what I was telling you.
Cyber journalism, sensational.
No. That one now is different. That one now is going into a profession to judge the quality of that profession. The wind of change brought change. That's the fact. It brought change. Now, it doesn't mean that the quality in various sectors of change is no. We're talking about churches. If you bring freedom and now there are churches, anybody can create anything in a parlor. It has brought change. That's the first thing that people wanted.
Freedom of worship.
Freedom of worship, freedom of expression. Freedom of association. Yeah. So political freedoms, because there are many of them. I should have a right to vote.
And the right to self-determination.
Yes, I should have a right to be voted. And all of that. Because in the past, people were picked to be voted. Yes, you came and waited for the list. The list will come out before you are voted either here or here as section president or whatever in those days. Well, the pressure was so much that not even Cameroon could withstand it. It's just that it's Cameroon that said the National Conference is sans objet. In other words, that they didn't see any need for it. But what was behind the pressure for those who wanted the National Conference is what actually happened in other countries, whereby it was an opportunity for the country to define itself. Who are we and where are we going to? And if it came, maybe the Anglophone problem would have found a lasting solution in there. Because we would have come out with a constitution that would have included all the worries in Cameroon, with or without the presidency or any other institution that existed. So people would have sat now and said, okay, this is, as we're leaving this room, this is our constitution. And then they start implementing.
Section 61 of that constitution, you raised a very important issue about that. He just had statement without clear-cut procedure. Okay, no time frame, and also if regions becomes, if provinces become region, what of their status now? What happened to their status? Or is it just changing? Because if you look at section 61, it says the following provisions shall be, the following provinces shall become regions: Adamawa, Center, East, Far North, Littoral, North, Northwest, West, South, Southwest. The President of the Republic may, as when necessary, change the names and modify the geographical boundaries of the regions listed in paragraph 1 above. Create regions in case, create other regions in case he shall, in case he shall give them names and fix their geographical boundaries.
It's the head of state, right?
Yes, the head of state.
Yeah, so he has the right to sit back and say, okay, Boyo division now has to change. Instead of passing through here, we'll shape it here. He can decide, okay, no, Boyo will no longer be called Boyo. We'll call it now Fundong. Okay, Fundong division. For example, I'm just giving a...
Yes, based on what is written on the constitution.
Yes.
He can say, define, give the name and define the geographical boundaries.
And look at the beginning of the statement. It says, shall become... Okay.
The following provinces shall become regions.
Full stop. Stop there, all right? There's no date that from the date of signature of this constitution, the following provinces shall become regions. When will they become regions? See, it's vague. And then when you go down, you don't now it doesn't define the relations now, because formally there are relations. There are relations within the provinces that were defined in relation to Yaoundé.
Okay, let me maybe go down. It says section 62, still on that section 62, still based on that, it says the aforementioned rules and regulations shall apply. Okay, say create other regions. In this case, he shall give them the names and fix their geographical boundaries. And section 62 sub 1 says the aforementioned rules and regulations shall apply to all regions. Section 62 sub 2 says without prejudice to the provisions of this part, the law may take into consideration the specificities of certain regions with regard to their organization and functionality.
So will their organization be different? Which you see, when you read it, you find yourself asking many questions than getting answers. That is, it will create, depending on their specificity and their function, because it doesn't mean that they were already functioning somehow and then now have to create, or I create them and create how they will function. You see, so in fact, on the whole, there are more questions than answers, and you see that the president comes up regularly. Okay, meaning that after the distinguishing of powers, and then when you see the president has to do it, the president does, and at the end the president signs the constitution. Okay, that constitution is signed by the president of the republic. All right. Now, as you say, why is it that you have an assembly and the president has to sign the constitution? Okay, so those are...
And the constitution is not even debated at the assembly.
Yeah.
Because in real sense, the assembly was where the constitution was supposed to be.
But if we go by what you have just said, let's look at part 6 of the constitution. That's section 63. That talk about amendment of the constitution.
Yes.
It says that amendment of the constitution may be proposed either by the president of the republic or by parliament. Any sub 2 63 sub 2 says any proposed amendment made by a member of parliament shall be signed by at least 1/3 of the members of either house. Parliament shall meet in Congress when called upon to examine a draft or a proposed amendment. The amendment shall be adopted by an absolute majority of the members of Parliament. The President of the Republic may request a second reading, in which case the amendment shall be adopted by 2/3 majority of the Parliament. The President of the Republic, the President of the Republic may decide to submit any bill to amend the Constitution to a referendum, in which case the amendment shall be adopted by a simple majority of voters cast. Section 64 says no procedure for the amendment of the Constitution affecting the Republican form, unity and territorial integrity of the state and the democratic principle which govern the state shall be accepted. This is where the bone of contention is, that no procedure for the amendment of the Constitution affecting the Republican institution, Republican reforms, unity and territorial integrity of the state or democratic value which govern the Republic shall be accepted. Now, how do you interpret this?
Yes, yes. No, you don't need to interpret. The issue is, well, those who are supposed to deposit any amendments are known, all right? Now, if any other person comes, we have the right to reject it, and we can give any reason based on one of these.
Yeah, based on the enlisted things, democratic principle.
Yeah, we can say, well, this one now doesn't work. Meaning that, okay, you have not even received it, but you're already defining why you are going to reject it. Now, who will reject it?
And for what reason?
For what? If I submit, it means that, and from there you realize that an individual cannot, it's as if Cameroonians are so foolish. It's as if
it must come only from
a parliamentarian. No, nobody has all the knowledge in the world.
And that has been happening. I'm not cutting you, senior journalist. It has been happening. You have seen how private bills have been fought by the obese majority of the civilian in the National Assembly, and none of them has ever gone through.
Bandam may so rest in peace.
Yes, Bandam came with a private bill that would have solved a lot of problems pertaining to what is happening in Norway and South Sudan, and it was thrown out because it links to what Tah Mai just read a while ago. And just to add again, Tah Mai Javis, this constitution was so obnoxious in such a way that it made us to continue to live in the presidentialist system.
Yeah.
That one is not arguable. Even Professor Ngole cannot argue that one. And I explain. You know that there is part of that constitution that was re-amended again in 2008 that gave powers to Mr. Biya to sit in office, and it was granting him immunity from prosecution both during and after he stayed in office. Meaning that even if Cameroonians deem it necessary to prosecute him because while in office he committed certain offenses, it will not be possible because the Constitution backs him. That while you were in office, the Constitution says you are not supposed to be prosecuted. So that presidential immunity is already another big problem. And it gives him the free right. It gives him an open, a free hand to name whosoever he wants, even if it is against the will and the wish of the Cameroonians, because he cannot be prosecuted. Of course, he is backed by the Constitution. He has the immunity given by a few, a minority, that is the few privileged minority.
How do you define a few privileged minority? Because it went to the upper and lower house.
He mentioned the
upper house at the time. At the time, we did not have the Senate. It was
no. Don't tell me anything about the Senate. The Senate.
I'm just saying that at the time that it was amended in 2000.
It is of no use.
You say amended in 2008 or so.
Yes.
The time it was amended, we didn't have the Senate. So
no, we did not.
It went to the Parliament.
It went to the Parliament. I was saying.
It was in Parliament.
But look, there is something he said a while ago, which is you have met. It has escaped my mind, and like I was saying, when I say yes, referendum, in countries where there have been a lot of tension about how national activities are being managed. When it comes to a point where they discover that the Senate or the Assembly is almost obsolete, or even the presidency is almost obsolete, for the presidency to buy its head, they throw it to a referendum. That is where the voice of the common man counts. Tah Mai. A mother in Akwaya, a mother from Buabua, a mother from Konene Womb, from where to away Bafmen. Their voices will count through a referendum. But mind you me that in a country like Cameroon, to be honest with you, there will never be a day with this regime in place where a referendum can count. Because they know that they have done a lot of things that they are not on the side of the history of the Cameroonians. If they open the gate to a referendum, there will be an explosion. Nobody will want to see them again. So that is why they do everything to turn around, and then just come out with what suits them. And I can put them there for as long as they want. That is why you see them doing what they're doing. So in actual sense, I am happy that we all agree that as of now we don't have a constitution.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence, let me go back to section 64 of the 1996 Constitution, which I'll ask my question to you, which says no procedure for the amendment of the Constitution affecting the Republican form, unity and territorial integrity of the state and the democratic principle which govern the republic shall be accepted. Is this why the Anglophone crisis has not been deliberated by the parliament? Or is it why, I know you are not a parliamentarian, but from this reading, could this be the reason why the parliament have not talked about the Anglophone crisis or the Senate, because maybe they consider it as it may lead to an amendment of the Constitution, and that doesn't meet with the Republican form, the unity and territorial integrity of the state or democratic principle which govern the Republic of Cameroon?
No, that's not the reason. If we have been having reforms in the state since 1960 up to now, it doesn't stop us from carrying out more reforms.
Yeah, this one is talking about federation, which may be repugnant to what it is stated here.
There was federation before, so it's the same thing. Anyway, the major thing is that as of now, the powers that be are scared of whatever reforms may come in, because it's going to trap many, many people who are hiding somewhere. So it cannot let it go. The dialogue that was organized, you saw how jittery, how difficult it was to manage it because of that fear, that blockage. Say no, if we introduce every other thing inside here, there may be fire. We better stay inside this constitution no matter what it is.
Even when the country is burning,
yes,
and going down.
We better hold this one and go back with it. That was the idea. Because if they opened it, oh my God, you would have been surprised that in this country, the Anglophone problem may even be too small to spark fire in this country. Too small. So they have to hold that and say, no, we want to open. It's true that the Anglophone problem was putting pressure and coming in too strong. But I'm telling you that if it was open to say, okay, one national dialogue, we're discussing everything about Cameroon, oh my God, it would have been deadly. It would have been deadly. So the system cannot allow any of such things to go through. So it's not only the constitutional provision, no. It's also what the government is holding strong.
And what others have described as political entrepreneurship.
Yes, because if you don't do that, you disappear from the scene. You have to be strong. Now, does it hurt the people? Are you working for the people? That's another question.
Ndiwum Emmanuel, I want us to go now again to special provisions. That is section 66 of the Constitution. I'm sure Mr. Kikishi talked about that, and I will read it. It states that the President of the Republic, the Prime Minister, members of government, person ranking as such, the President and members of the Bureau of the National Assembly, the President and members of the Bureau of the Senate, members of Parliament, senators, all holders of an elective office, Secretary General of Ministries and persons ranking as such, directors of central administration, general managers of public and semi-public enterprises, judicial and legal officers, administrative personnel in charge of the tax base, collection and handling of public funds, or managers of public vote and property shall declare their assets and property at the beginning and at the end of their tenure in office. The other categories of persons to whom the provisions of this article shall apply, and the condition implementation thereof shall be determined by the law. It did not give. There's no.
Always.
Implementation.
No time frame
of implementation, or what we call the article, the decree.
Decree of application.
The text of application.
There is no text of application there, and the question I ask now is, who is fooling who in this country? If truly everything, because when it is good, they say we thank the head of state. When it is bad, they say no, we should not touch the head of state. When was the last time President Biya declared his assets? when he was taking off his Tah Mai.
But there's no text of application to hold him
Listen.
accountable.
Yes. Yes. You are supporting my point. When was the last time when was the last time the Senate president who barely works declared his assets? You see that the problem we are facing here now, to say it right, is a system. It is no longer the constitution. If we were to attack something now, we should be attacking the whole system, because the whole system is rotten. The whole system is spoiled. We have good laws. Like some people used to say it, Cameroon has one of the best laws on paper in Africa. If somebody came into Cameroon and were to read the laws in Cameroon only on paper, he would have thought that Cameroon was the best in the whole world. But mind you, if the person had to be in Cameroon for 6 months, which is half a year, to see what obtains in the field, he will be disappointed. Because that text of application you are talking, who is supposed to sign it? Is it not the president? If the president refuses to sign that text of application, it means that the president has refused to ever declare his own assets. So as it stands now, there's a lot of embezzlement in the country. Even we were to hold our president accountable, we don't know where are his assets. What type of assets does he have? Are they in Cameroon or they are out of Cameroon? So you see that everything turns around and falls back squarely on the head of state, because he is the one who has the key to every door in the country. If you make yourself a god in the country, serve the people as a god. If you make yourself omnipresent, serve the people as somebody who is omnipresent. Be present everywhere. And I think that even the principals of schools, their stamps should be coming from the offices of the head of state, because the head of state is supposed to be everywhere.
Well, okay. I want us, you raised a personal issue about the signature as of the date of this signature. If you look at the last article, last section before the signature of president, which was on 18th of January 1996, when President Biya signed this 1996 constitution. Let me read I think the last two paragraphs there to see what you were saying, that there was nothing as of the date of this signature, these things are going to full effect.
Yes.
It reads the legislation, this section 68 of 1996 constitution reads: the legislation applicable in the federal state of Cameroon and in the federal states on the date of entry into force of this constitution shall remain in force insofar as it is not repugnant to this constitution, and as long as it is not amended by subsequent laws and regulation. This law shall be registered and published in the official gazette of the Republic of Cameroon in English and in French, and implemented as the Constitution of the Republic of Cameroon. Yaoundé, 18 January 1996. Paul Biya, President of the Republic.
Yeah, that's what I asked you, which constitution are we applying since 1960 up to date. We don't have a specific, we don't have something you can call, this is the constitution of Cameroon. All those efforts are being applied. That is the one of 60, the one of 61, the one of 60 of 72, and then the one of 96. They are being implemented. So each from the aspect that suits the moment. So you don't know exactly which one, and then that aspect of it, I did not understand why they had to remind that, to recall that aspect of saying that, okay, those federal institutions had to continue functioning as long as the scare is always...
So there is a window of opportunity for federation.
It's not just a window.
Because it's in the constitution.
No, it's not just a window. The way the country was founded requires that you cannot just tamper with those things like that. This country is a sovereign state. It had independence on the 1st of January 1960. It was not a joke. It's a solemn event that was duly taken care of as other international events and registered at the UN. Then after that, There was another solemn event where a certain part of this country that had separated and gone to Nigeria.
1st October.
Yes. Left Nigeria, came and settled, and after some time said, well, since you people are independent, you have already created a country. You have your head of state, everything is functioning. Mr. UN said, okay, now it's time for the British to liberate their trusteeship territories. Now, for you people who don't know, but you are going to choose what you will do with your own state, what will be your status. So they looked around and said, okay, either you stay where you are, or you move back to Cameroon where we cut you out for administration. It was another solemn ceremony, another solemn event by which a people and a territory were coming to add to another people and territory that already existed as a country. How do you manage that? So,
with the cultural differences. And
there is a lot inside. There's a lot inside in such a way that,
differences.
And I understood why they hesitated to drop that out. Because if you drop that out tomorrow, there will be a question mark somewhere. You get to the UN or somewhere and you put up a document, they say, no, sorry, this is what we received.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kikishi. Thank you for coming.
It was my pleasure.
We want to also thank you, Ndiwum, for coming.
Emma is always up to
very short notice.
Yes, my media prime is our structure. It's a structure that is serving Cameroon, Africa, and the world.
Yeah.
And each time we are called to give a backup, we always answer present, especially when it is coming from House of Commons. The first step that took us to where we are today.
Yeah.
So it's always a pleasure.
Last week we announced that House of Commons will be carrying out a visit to internally displaced persons as far as the New Year celebration is concerned. We are happy that we've had donations from some viewers. The number that you see on the screen is the number that can contact me in case you have maybe a bag of rice, some cloth, some other materials will help our team, House of Commons team, so that we can visit some internally displaced persons. We will be glad to. And also, if you want to participate on the program, you can contact the number on your screen. We receive members of different diversity, regardless of your views, as long as you take responsibility of your statement. Also, the number on your screen is the mobile money number to those of you who want to support financially for the donation of internally displaced persons. You can contact the number on your screen, regardless of wherever you want to be. The number is on your screen. I leave you with this: no matter the matter, what matters is your matter. No matter the matter, what matters is your matter. As for me, what matters is that stand together for what you believe, work for what must be done, love each other in all that you do, and as God says, to all my people I want to spread the peace, my brother. My name is Tah Mai Javis from Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, Fengujong. Bange Kotobu Namusadi. Bye-bye.